It wasn't until I brought home a pitiful girl from the orphanage to be my sister that the way my aloof wife, my partner in a business marriage, looked at me changed. She suddenly started coming home every day, transforming from an ice queen into a clingy little wildcat, teasing me until my heart raced out of control. Just as I was indulging in these sweet perks, she pinned me against the wall with red-rimmed eyes. "Hey, Ning, you can only belong to me. My name is Ning Tion. I am a CEO of the Ning Group. My marriage is a business alliance. My wife, Lu Rian, is the daughter of the Lu family. We have been married for 2 years, treating each other with polite distance. She is beautiful and independent, like a flower on a high peak. We were both busy and rarely interfered in each other's lives. Until a month ago, when a business collaboration took me to an orphanage. That was where I met Bai Ruobing. She was 18, just barely an adult, curled up in a corner like an abandoned kitten. The director said she was smart and had excellent grades, but she was withdrawn and unwilling to be adopted. For some reason, seeing her clear yet stubborn gaze stirred something in my heart. I was reminded of my own lonely and helpless younger self. "Would you like to come with me?" I crouched down, trying to keep my voice gentle. "I can support you through college and give you a home." She looked at me for a long time, long enough that I thought she would refuse. Finally, she nodded slightly and placed her hand in my palm. It was very cold. I brought Bai Ruobing home. I arranged for her to stay in the guest room on the second floor. "This is your home from now on," I told her. "You can call me Brother Ning." She lowered her head and responded softly, Ning." I was slightly stunned, but I didn't correct her. Lu Ruyan didn't ask many questions about my decision to bring an 18-year-old girl home. She merely glanced indifferently at Bai Ruobing, said, "You can decide on household matters," and paid it no further attention. I thought this was just a small interlude in life. I didn't expect it to be the start of a storm. Bai Ruobing was very dependent on me. When I got off work, she would be the first to run to the door, looking up at me with her small face. "Hey, Ning, you're back." During my work breaks, she would carefully bring over a cup of tea she had just learned to brew. Her eyes were timid, holding a hint of ingratiation. Ning, das te eat. Is it too bitter?" Her health didn't seem very good. Her complexion was always a bit pale. Occasionally, she would cough softly in front of me, and when I asked with concern, she would quickly wave her hand and say she was fine. "I'm just a little tired. I'll be fine after a rest. Don't worry, Ning." That fragile yet determinately strong appearance of hers really made it easy to soften one's heart. I tried my best to play the role of a reliable older brother, caring about her studies, looking after her life. I didn't notice the subtle changes in the house. It was Lu Ruyan who first noticed something was amiss. She suddenly started coming home earlier, and instead of going straight to the master bedroom or study like before, she would sit in the living room, as if waiting for something. When I returned home to face Bai Ruobing's welcome, Lu Ruyan would appear at just the right moment. She no longer wore her severe business suits, but had changed into soft loungewear that outlined her fine figure. "You're back." She walked up to me and naturally reached out to loosen my tie. Her movements were gentle, accompanied by a faint, elusive fragrance. Her fingertips would occasionally brush against my neck, sending a subtle shiver through me. My body stiffened slightly. This wasn't like her. "Ruyan." She looked up at me, her eyes shimmering with a kind of allure I had never seen before. "What's wrong? Isn't it normal for a wife to help tidy up when her husband comes home from work?" She leaned in very close. Her voice was pitched low, meant only for the two of us, like a cat retracting its claws to tease someone with its soft fur. My heart skipped a beat. Bai Ruobing stood to the side, watching us. She bit her lip, her face seeming to grow even paler. She gently tugged at the hem of my shirt. "Ning, I feel a bit dizzy." I instinctively turned to look at her. "What's wrong? Did you skip a meal again?" Lu Ruyan's movements paused. She looked at Bai Ruobing's hand clutching my shirt, her gaze turning slightly cold. But when she looked back at me, she resumed that lazy smile, armed with hidden hooks. "Is little sister feeling unwell? Should we call the family doctor to take a look?" Although she spoke words of concern, her tone was indifferent. Bai Ruobing shrank behind me, whispering, "No need, Sister Ruyan. I'll be fine after some rest. I don't want to trouble Ning." After that, Lu Ruyan's behavior became even more proactive. When I was reading, she would sit opposite me, doing nothing, just resting her chin in her hand and watching me. Her gaze was burning, making it impossible for me to focus. When I washed up at night, she would lean against the bathroom doorway. She would discuss insignificant domestic trivia with me. Even when the strap of her silk nightgown slipped down her arm, she seemed unaware of it. The most intense moment was, she walked into my study holding a glass of red wine. She hugged me from behind. Ning Tian. Her cheek pressed against my back, her voice carrying a trace of lazy intoxication. Shouldn't we start acting like a real married couple? The documents in my hand almost fell to the floor. All the blood in my body seemed to rush to the top of my head. This sudden benefit left me both confused and unable to resist. I almost drowned in her uncharacteristic passion. Until that afternoon, I finished my meeting early and went home. Opening the door, I saw Bai Ruobing slumped at the top of the stairs, her eyes rimmed red. Lu Ruyan stood before her, her expression cold. "What's going on?" I walked over quickly. Seeing me, Bai Ruobing's tears fell instantly. She extended her hand, revealing a tiny, almost invisible red mark on her wrist. "Ning, don't blame Sister Ruyan. I fell by myself, accidentally." Lu Ruyan sneered and crossed her arms. "I didn't even touch her." Bai Ruobing shrank back, tears falling even harder, looking at me helplessly. "I'm sorry, Ning. It's all my fault. For making Sister Ruyan angry." Looking at this chaotic scene, I felt a massive headache coming on. That night, I tried to communicate with Lu Ruyan. Ruobing is still young. She just came out of the orphanage, so she might be sensitive." Lu Ruyan was applying nail polish. Hearing this, she paused. She looked up at me, her eyes seemingly coated in a layer of ice. "So you think I'm bullying her?" "That's not what I meant." She stood up and walked in front of me. Her fingers lightly traced across my chest. Yet her voice carried a bone-chilling coldness. "Ning Tian, you really care about her down to the finest detail, don't you?" She leaned close to my ear, her warm breath spraying against my earlobe. But the words she spoke sent a shiver through my heart. "Just how good is that little girl? To make you protect her like this?" I looked at her face, inches away, emotions I couldn't read surging in those beautiful eyes. There was anger, grievance, and a trace of hurt. I suddenly realized, did she misunderstand something? Before I could figure out, Lu Ruyan had already taken a step back. She returned to that high and mighty, cold demeanor, as if the person questioning me with jealousy just now wasn't her. "Next week is the company's anniversary gala. Remember to clear your schedule." She turned and walked toward the bedroom, leaving behind an elegant yet distant silhouette. As my husband, you need to be by my side the entire time. The door closed softly. I stood rooted to the spot, feeling a mix of emotions. My wrist seemed to still retain the sensation of her fingertips tracing it. The air was still permeated with her cold fragrance. I lowered my head and looked at my hand. I smiled helplessly. What is all this? On one side, a sister who relies on me and looks fragile and innocent. On the other, a contracted wife who suddenly changed and is acting hot and cold. I felt like I was falling into a sweet, yet thorny whirlpool. After Lu Ruyan announced that I was to accompany her to the anniversary gala, the atmosphere at home became even more subtle. Bai Ruobing seemed to become even clingier. She seized almost every moment I was home to appear by my side. "Ning, I don't know how to do this math problem. Can you teach me?" She held a workbook, looking at me expectantly. I was just about to speak. Lu Ruyan walked over elegantly, holding a plate of washed grapes. She sat naturally on the armrest of the sofa beside me, leaning her body slightly toward me. She picked up a grape and held it to my lips. "Husband, taste it. It's very sweet." Her voice was gentle, carrying a tone that brooked no refusal. I looked at her fingers inches away and the crystal-clear grape, somewhat stunned. Bai Ruobing's fingers holding the workbook tightened slightly. Lu Ruyan smiled faintly, as if she had only just seen her. "Sister Ruobing is studying? So diligent. But for this kind of problem, just ask the family tutor. Why bother your brother Ning? He's already very tired from managing the company every day." As she spoke, she pushed her fingertips forward again, almost touching my lips. "Husband, open up." I subconsciously opened my mouth. The sweet grape juice spread through my mouth. Indeed, very sweet. Bai Ruobing's face paled a little. She lowered her head and whispered, "I'm sorry, Aning. I didn't know you were so tired. I won't disturb you anymore." She hugged the workbook, turned, and ran upstairs. Her retreating figure looked somewhat frail and pitiful. Lu Ruyin watched her leave, the corners of her mouth curling into a barely discernible arc. She pulled out a tissue and deliberately wiped her hands. Kids just don't know any better. She leaned down and gently blew a breath into my ear. "Right, hubby?" The frequency with which she called me hubby had noticeably increased. Moreover, every time she said it, her tone was exceptionally lingering, carrying an implication of staking her claim. Looking at her profile inches away, my heartbeat became a bit erratic. This feeling of being cared for by her wasn't bad. In fact, I rather enjoyed it. The next day was the weekend. It was a rare day off for me at home. Bai Ruobing knocked on my study door. She was holding a plate of freshly baked cookies. Their shapes were a bit clumsy, but the aroma was mouth-watering. "Aning, I learned to bake cookies. Would you like to try some?" Her eyes sparkled, filled with anticipation. I picked one up. The taste wasn't bad. "It's delicious. You're very talented, Ruobing." She immediately beamed, as if she had received the greatest praise in the world. "I'm glad Aning likes it. I'll make them for you often." Just then, Lu Ruyin's voice drifted in from the doorway. "Oh, what delicious things are we making?" She was wearing a wine-red velvet gown today, which made her skin look as white as snow. Her aura was extraordinary. She walked over elegantly, her gaze sweeping past the plate of cookies without lingering. Instead, she looked directly at me. "Hubby, has the Thai I ordered arrived? Accompany me to a private cocktail party tonight. I want to see you wear the one I picked." She walked up to my side, naturally picked up the water glass I'd been drinking from, and took a sip. The gesture was incredibly intimate. The smile on Bai Ruobing's face froze. She watched Lu Ruyin use the cup I had drunk from, and the light in her eyes dimmed. As if only just noticing her, Lu Ruyin offered a faint smile. "Little sister is here, too? The cookies are baked well, but your brother Ning has a weak stomach, so he should take it easy on rich, sweet things." As she spoke, she reached out to straighten my collar, which wasn't even messy. Her fingertips ghosted over my Adam's apple. "Right, hubby?" My throat felt a bit dry, so I could only nod. Bai Ruobing lowered her head silently, staring at the tips of her shoes. Her voice was as faint as a mosquito's buzz. "I understand, Sister Ruyin. I'm sorry, Aning. I didn't know your stomach was bad." She picked up the plate of cookies and whispered, "I'll go out now." Watching her dejected retreating figure, I felt a bit uneasy. Lu Ruyin, however, seemed like she had won a battle. Her mood was excellent. She placed her hands on my shoulders, applying slight pressure to make me lean back against the chair. She looked down at me, her eyes holding a trace of slyness and triumph. "Ning Tian." She rarely called me by my full name. "Remember who you are." Her finger tapped lightly against my chest. "You are my husband, Lu Ruyin's husband." Her voice was soft, yet it carried an unquestionable dominance. In here, there can only be me. Looking at the clear possessiveness in her eyes, my heart gave a violent thud. This blunt declaration carried more impact than any roundabout flirting ever could. That evening, I accompanied Lu Ruyin to the private cocktail party as promised. She held my arm, handling herself with ease and looking radiant. In front of everyone, she treated me with the utmost respect. Talking and laughing, we appeared to be the picture of a loving couple. Only I knew that the hand resting in the crook of my arm would occasionally give me a sharp pinch, as if to remind me, don't get distracted. It was getting late when we returned home. The villa was quiet, lit only by a few wall sconces. As soon as we entered the living room, we saw Bai Ruobing curled up on the sofa, apparently asleep. She was covered only by a thin blanket. Hearing the commotion, she woke up. She rubbed her eyes, and upon seeing us, immediately stood up. "Aning, Sister Ruyin, you're back." Dressed in flimsy pajamas, she looked even more frail. I made some hangover soup. It's keeping warm in the kitchen. Would you like some?" Her eyes gazed at me timidly, filled with obvious concern. The smile on Lu Ruyin's face faded. She released my arm, crossed her own, and looked coldly at Bai Ruobing. "You're certainly thoughtful, little sister, staying up this late just to wait for us." Her tone was dripping with sarcasm. Bai Ruobing seemed frightened. She shrank back, her eyes instantly reddening. That's not it. I was just worried about Anning. She looked at me, tears welling up in her eyes. Anning, did I do something wrong again? Seeing her like this, my heart softened. No, Ruobing, thank you. I try to keep my voice gentle. It's late. Go get some rest so you don't catch a cold. Bai Ruobing nodded obediently, whispered good night, and quickly headed upstairs with her head down. Lu Rian watched coldly from the sidelines. Only when Bai Ruobing's figure disappeared at the top of the stairs did she let out a cold scoff. Truly heart-wrenching. She turned to face me, her eyes sharp. Ning Tian, do you enjoy being fought over by two women? I looked at her, a little helpless. Ruyan, she's just a child. A child? Lu Ruyan cut me off, stepping forward until she was almost pressed against me. She looked up at me, her red lips curving into a cold, alluring arc. 18, she's an adult. Her finger traced my tie, slowly moving down, stopping at my chest. The way she looks at you isn't like a child looking at her brother. Her fingertip, through my shirt, gently poked my heart. This place, it better stay clear. Her voice carried a hint of warning. It was mixed with an indescribable allure. Don't forget who your wife is. With that, she didn't wait for my reaction, suddenly stood on her tiptoes and pressed a brief but distinct kiss on my lips. It carried the scent of wine and her unique fragrance. A touch and then gone. She stepped back, looking at my slightly stunned expression, and smiled with satisfaction. Her eyes were like a cat that had successfully stolen a fish. Good night, my husband. She turned, swaying gracefully as she walked towards the master bedroom, leaving me alone in the empty living room. On my lips, there seemed to linger the soft touch and faint hint of wine. The next morning, when I woke up, the touch of last night's kiss seemed to still linger on my lips. Walking into the dining room, Lu Rian was already seated there. She was dressed in an exquisite business suit, elegantly eating her breakfast. Seeing me, she looked up, her gaze calm and unruffled, as if she wasn't the one who had actively kissed me last night. Morning. She greeted me blandly and continued to look at the tablet in her hand. It was I who involuntarily felt my ears flush. Bai Ruobing was also in the dining room. Today, she wore a white dress, looking even more pure and innocent. She was carefully ladling porridge for me. Ning, it's good for your stomach to have some porridge in the morning. She gently placed a bowl in front of me, her eyes filled with anticipation. Thank you. I took the bowl. Lu Rian's gaze shifted from her tablet to Bai Ruobing. She said nothing, only picked up her coffee cup and took a slow sip. Her eyes held an air of condescending scrutiny. Bai Ruobing seemed to feel the pressure, her fingers subtly curling. She whispered to me, Ning, today, our school has a cultural performance, and I have solo dance. Can you come? Her eyes were timid, pleading. I really hope you can come. I was about to answer. Lu Rian put down her coffee cup with a crisp sound. She picked up a napkin and slowly wiped the corners of her mouth, her movements deliberate. At 3 this afternoon, the group has an important board meeting that requires your personal presence, husband. She looked at me, her tone brooking no argument. It concerns the strategic deployment for the next quarter, and all directors will be present. She specifically emphasized all directors. Bai Ruobing's face instantly dimmed. She lowered her head, twisting the hem of her dress. It's okay, Ning. Work is important. I was just asking. Her lost expression would soften anyone's heart. Lu Rian, however, seemed not to notice. She stood up and picked up her handbag. As she reached my side, she paused. Naturally, she leaned down and kissed my cheek. Husband, I'm going to the company. She straightened up, her gaze seemingly sweeping over Bai Ruobing's instantly pale face. A faint curve played at the corner of her lips. See you tonight. She turned and left, the sound of her high heels clicking on the floor, crisp and composed. Like a victorious queen, I touched the spot on my cheek where she had kissed me, feeling a strange sensation in my heart. This public declaration of her ownership caught me off guard, yet I also subtly enjoyed it. Bai Ruobing stood rooted, head down, shoulders trembling slightly. Ning. Her voice was choked. Am I? Very annoying. She looked up, her eyes red-rimmed at me. Sister Rian seems to dislike me very much. If I'm causing you trouble, I can move back to the orphanage." As she spoke, tears streamed down her face like broken pearls. Her fragile, helpless appearance squeezed my heart. "Don't talk nonsense." I sighed, pulled out a tissue, and handed it to her. "This is your home. Live here in peace." Ruyan, she just has a cold personality. She doesn't dislike you. I knew these words were a bit hollow. Ruabing took the tissue, wiped her tears, and forced a smile. I understand, Ning. Thank you." She lowered her head and whispered, "I'm going to school." Watching her lonely figure leave, I rubbed my temples. This, being caught in the middle, was not a pleasant feeling. In the afternoon, I presided over the board meeting on schedule. The agenda was important, certainly, but not so rigid that the time couldn't have been adjusted. I knew Lu Ruyan had done it on purpose. She was drawing a line in the sand, in her own way. After the meeting, I returned to my office. I received a video from Bai Ruabing on my phone. It was a clip of her pirouetting on stage in a ballet dress. Under the spotlight, she looked like a graceful butterfly, her smile pure and innocent. The caption read, "Ning, even though you couldn't make it, I still wanted to dance for you. I hope you like it." She was indeed beautiful in the video, possessing the unique vivacity of a young girl. I replied with a simple, "You danced beautifully." Almost at the exact moment I hit send, there was a knock on my office door. Lu Ruyan pushed the door open and walked in. She held a folder in her hand, as if she were there to discuss business. But her gaze landed precisely on my phone screen, which I hadn't had time to lock. On the screen was the freeze frame of Bai Ruabing dancing. Lu Ruyan's eyes instantly turned cold. She walked up to my desk and set the folder down. Leaning forward slightly, she braced her hands on the desk and looked me straight in the eye. "It seems President Ning has plenty of free time." The corners of her red lips curved up, but her eyes were cold as ice. "Enough time to admire dance videos, at least." I instinctively started to explain, but she didn't give me the chance. She straightened up, crossed her arms, and let out a cold laugh. "It makes sense. Having an 18-year-old, multi-talented sister at home is certainly much more interesting than facing a cold-natured wife like me." She had obviously overheard what I said to comfort Bai Ruabing this morning. Seeing the surging anger and a trace of imperceptible grievance in her eyes, I felt a mix of helplessness and amusement. This jealous side of her was much more vivid than her usual aloof demeanor. "Ruyan, that was just..." "Don't bother explaining." She cut me off and walked around to stand in front of me. Suddenly, she reached out, grabbed my tie, and forced me to lower my head slightly. She brought her face close to mine, her breath brushing against my cheek. "Ning Tian." Staring into my eyes, she enunciated every word. "I don't care if you see her as a sister or whatever else, but you need to be clear about who is the one standing by your side." Her voice was low, laced with a dangerous seduction. "Your eyes must look only at me." With that, she abruptly released my tie and turned to leave. She stopped at the door. Without looking back, she said indifferently, "Sleep in the master bedroom tonight. I've already had your pillow and pajamas moved there." The door clicked shut. I stood there, my tie still askew from her grip. The air still held the lingering scent of her cold fragrance. I mulled over her domineering, jealous words. And that command, "Sleep in the master bedroom tonight." My heart began to beat faster involuntarily. Lu Ruyan's words, "Sleep in a master bedroom tonight," were like a stone cast into the lake of my heart, sending out ripple after ripple. For the rest of the day, I was somewhat absent-minded. While processing documents, the image of her eyes, filled with slight anger and possessiveness as she grabbed my tie, kept floating before me. As soon as the workday ended, I left the office, nearly an hour earlier than usual. Pushing open the front door, I was surprised not to see Bai Ruabing. The living room was very quiet. Lu Ruyan was sitting on the sofa, seemingly reading a fashion magazine. She had changed out of her business suit into a set of dark green silk loungewear, which made her skin look like jade. Her long hair was let down casually, softening her usual sharp edge and adding a touch of domestic languor. Hearing the door open, she looked up, her gaze resting on me. There was no surprise in her eyes, as if she had expected me to come home early. "You're back early today." Her tone was flat, revealing no emotion. "Yeah, I finished my work." I changed my shoes and sat down on the sofa opposite her. A subtle tension permeated the air. Neither of us mentioned the kiss from last night, nor did we bring up her command this morning for me to return to the master bedroom. It was like a silent game of chess. A little later, Bai Ruobing came downstairs. Her eyes lit up when she saw me, but that light quickly dimmed when she noticed Lu Ruyin sitting nearby. She was holding a beautifully packaged small box. "Ining, you're back." She walked up to me and handed me the box, her voice soft. "I passed a handmade cookie shop after school today and saw these. I remembered you said you liked the cookies I bake, so I bought some. I don't know if you like them." Her look was timid and ingratiating. I was just about to take it. Lu Ruyin closed the magazine in her hands with a soft snap. She stood up, walked leisurely over to me, and sat down right next to me. We were very close enough for me to smell the faint fragrance of her hair. She didn't even glance at the box of cookies. Instead, she reached out and naturally straightened my shirt collar. "Honey, your collar is a little crooked." Her fingertips inadvertently grazed the skin of my neck, sending a slight tingle through me. Only after finishing this motion did she seem to notice Bai Ruobing and the box in her hands. She smiled faintly, her expression polite yet distant. "Did Ruobing buy cookies again? How thoughtful." Then her tone shifted as she looked at me. "But honey, have you forgotten what the doctor said last time? You need to watch your sugar intake. It's best to avoid these sweets." As she spoke, she reached out, took the box of cookies, and casually set it aside on the coffee table. Her movements were natural, as if she were merely dealing with something insignificant. Bai Ruobing's outstretched hand froze in midair, and the smile on her face stiffened. She looked at the cookies Lu Ruyin had so dismissively set aside, her eyes slowly reddening. She bit her lip and hung her head. "I'm sorry, Ining. I didn't know you couldn't have sugar. I made a mistake again." Her voice was choked with emotion, sounding incredibly aggrieved. Lu Ruyin acted as if she hadn't heard a thing. She picked up an apple and a fruit knife, beginning to peel it methodically. Her fingers were slender and dexterous. The apple peel fell away in an even, unbroken strip. "Don't overthink it, little sister. You meant well." Her tone was indifferent. "It's just that men can be like children sometimes. They lack self-control, so we wives have to look out for them." She cut the peeled apple into small wedges, speared one with a toothpick, and held it up to my lips. "Try it. It's sweet and healthy." She looked at me, her gaze allowing no room for refusal. I looked at the apple near my lips, then glanced at Bai Ruobing, who stood nearby with her head lowered, shoulders trembling slightly. After a moment's hesitation, I opened my mouth. The apple was crisp and sweet. Lu Ruyin smiled with satisfaction, speared another piece, and continued feeding me, completely ignoring Bai Ruobing, who was on the verge of tears beside us. Bai Ruobing stood there like an unwanted outsider. She watched Lu Ruyin intimately feeding me the apple, witnessing my submission to her. The tears finally spilled over. She turned abruptly and ran upstairs. The sound of her footsteps was accompanied by suppressed sobbing. I watched her disappearing figure, feeling a mixture of unease and guilt. Lu Ruyin, however, acted as if nothing had happened. She set down the remaining apple and pulled out a tissue to wipe her hands. It seems she is still too young. Her emotions are quite unstable. Her tone was flat. "You need to rest more. Don't let insignificant matters affect your mood." She stood up and looked down at me. "I'm going to take a shower." She paused, then added, "In the master bathroom." She gave me a pointed look, then turned and walked elegantly toward the master bedroom. I sat alone in the living room. On the coffee table, that box of neglected handmade cookies still sat. The air still seemed to hold the fresh scent of apples and the cold fragrance of Lu Ruyin. My mind replayed the silent confrontation between the two women. Every one of Lu Ruyin's movements and words carried a precise strike and unmistakable possessiveness. In her own way, she was slowly erasing the traces Bai Ruobing had left around me. And in her own way, redefining the relationship between us. The lights in the master bedroom were dimmed to a warm orange glow. Lu Ruyin had finished showering and was leaning against the headboard reading, wearing a silk slip nightgown. Her damp hair tips still held moisture, softening her usually sharp features. Hearing me enter, she didn't look up. She simply turned a page of her book and spoke indifferently. "Your pajamas are in the bathroom. Her tone was as natural as if we had always shared a bed. I walked into the bathroom. Fine water droplets still clung to the frosted glass, and the air was filled with the cool fragrance of her usual body wash. On the vanity, my toiletries were arranged alongside her exquisite bottles and jars, blurring the boundaries between them. It was a strange feeling. When I finished showering and came out of my pajamas, Lu Rian had already put down her book. She was lying on her side, facing me, eyes closed and breathing evenly, as if she were asleep. I moved quietly, lifting the duvet on the other side and lying down. The mattress dipped slightly. A polite distance remained between us, yet her scent and warmth silently drifted over. I turned off the bedside lamp on my side. The room plunged into darkness and silence. There was only the sound of our soft breathing. I thought I would suffer from insomnia, but surprisingly, surrounded by her familiar yet strange scent, I soon grew drowsy. In my half-asleep state, I felt a warm, soft body press against me. Her hand rested lightly on my waist, and her cheek unconsciously nuzzled against my back, like a kitten seeking warmth. I didn't move, letting her lean against me. A corner of my heart softened unexpectedly. The next morning, I was awakened by sunlight and the aroma of food. The space beside me was already empty. Lu Rian had risen early. I walked out of the bedroom, surprised to find her in the kitchen. She was wearing a light gray apron I had never seen before, watching the fried eggs in the pan with intense focus. Her movements weren't exactly skilled, but she was earnest. Toast and milk were already set out on the dining table. Bai Ruobing was up as well, sitting at the table. She watched Lu Rian's back in the kitchen with a complicated look in her eyes. Seeing me, she stood up immediately. "Aning, good morning." Her gaze flickered between me and the master bedroom, her voice sounding a bit dry. "Morning." I nodded. Lu Rian turned around with the fried eggs. Seeing me, her face remained expressionless. "You're up? Have some breakfast." She placed the eggs, their edges slightly scorched, onto the plate in front of me. "It's my first time making them. Just make do." She untied her apron and sat opposite me, her posture as elegant as ever. Bai Ruobing looked at the breakfast Lu Rian had made herself, then at the empty plate before her, her fingers tightening slightly. She lowered her head and whispered, "Sister Ruyan is amazing. I usually make breakfast for Aning." Lu Rian picked up a slice of toast and unhurriedly spread jam over it. "Isn't it only right to make breakfast for one's husband?" She raised her eyes and gave Bai Ruobing an indifferent glance. "You'll have a family of your own one day, little sister. You'll understand then." With a single sentence, she understatedly drew a line, excluding Bai Ruobing from us. Bai Ruobing's face paled. She said nothing more, silently picking up a slice of toast and nibbling on it. The breakfast proceeded in a delicate silence. After the meal, I got ready to head to the office. Lu Rian picked up my suit jacket and helped me put it on with natural ease. Her hands brushed over my shoulders as she adjusted my collar. Then, she picked up a dark blue tie. It wasn't the one I usually wore. "Try this one. I just bought it. It goes with your suit today." She stood before me, standing on tiptoe to skillfully knot the tie. Her fingers moved deftly, her breath close against me. I looked down, taking in her focused expression and the slight flutter of her long eyelashes. Bai Ruobing stood nearby, watching the scene, her eyes looking as if they had been stung. Lu Rian finished the knot, smoothed it out gently, and scrutinized it, seeming satisfied. She took a half step back and smiled faintly. There. The entire process was natural and fluid, carrying an unquestionable intimacy. I touched the knot of the tie, feeling a strange sensation in my heart. "Thank you." Lu Rian picked up her handbag. "Let's go. We'll leave together." She naturally took my arm and looked at Bai Ruobing. "Little sister, we're off to the office. Have a good day at school." Bai Ruobing stood rooted to the spot, staring at our linked arms, and managed to squeeze out a smile. "Goodbye, Aning. Goodbye, Sister Rian." Her voice was so faint it was barely audible. Once we were out the door and in the car, Lu Rian let go of my arm. She reverted to her usual cold demeanor and took out her phone to answer emails. It was as if the gentle, considerate wife from a moment ago had been nothing but a hallucination. The car drove smoothly toward the office. Lu Ruyan kept her head down, looking at her phone, the profile of her face appearing somewhat cold in the morning light. As we neared the office, she suddenly spoke, her gaze remaining on the screen. It's my father's birthday next week. We're hosting a small family dinner at home. Clear your schedule in advance. Her tone was the usual notification, not a request for discussion. Okay, I responded. It was a necessary social obligation following our arranged marriage. I was long used to it. She put away her phone and turned her gaze out the window. Remember to prepare a gift. Father has been into collecting inkstones recently. Understood. The car fell into silence again. It wasn't until the car stopped in front of the office building and she was about to get out that she added one more thing. Dress formally that day. She paused, her meaning pointed. Just us. I was slightly stunned, but then I understood. She meant without Bairuabing. Watching her back as she pushed the door open and exited, I suddenly felt that this aloof wife of mine possessed an extraordinary persistence when it came to staking her claim, and her methods were becoming increasingly precise. That afternoon, I received a message from Bairuabing. It was a photo of her standing in a shopping mall with a famous stationery store in the background. Ning, I heard Uncle Lu likes inkstones. I happened to be at the mall and wanted to pick one out for his birthday. Which style do you think is better? A cute emoji was attached. I looked at the phone screen and frowned slightly. Lu Ruyan had explicitly stated that this was a family dinner for just us. Bairuabing's intent with this move was becoming rather obvious. I replied, no need to go to such expense. I will prepare the gift. You just focus on your studies. After the message was sent, there was a long silence on the other end. It wasn't until I was about to get off work that I received her reply. Oh, I see. Ning, do you also feel like I'm just a burden? A crying emoji followed the text. I did not reply again. After finishing the work at hand, I rubbed my temples and prepared to go home. Pushing open the study door, however, I found Bairuabing standing outside. Her eyes were red and swollen, as if she had been crying for a long time. In her hand, she tightly clutched an exquisite brocade box. Ning. Her voice was hoarse and thick with nasal congestion. Am I really that annoying? She held the brocade box out to me and opened it. Inside was a small sheet inkstone with delicate carving. It was obvious she had put thought into it. I just wanted to express my gratitude. Uncle Lu is your father-in-law, and since I'm staying here, I should. As she spoke, tears fell again, landing on the velvet lining of the box. Sister Ruyan doesn't like me, I know. I can't do anything right. I only cause trouble for you, Ning. She looked up at me with tear-filled eyes, her gaze so fragile it seemed it might shatter at a touch. If my presence makes things difficult for you, Ning, I can leave right now. She made a gesture to turn away, but her footsteps were unsteady and staggering, as if she might faint at any moment. Seeing her like this, my heart softened slightly, and I sighed. No one wants you to leave. I took the brocade box, which felt warm to the touch. The inkstone is beautiful. Thank you for the thought. Bairuabing immediately broke into a smile through her tears, as if she had received a heavenly reward. Really? As long as you like it, Ning. She took a step forward, seeming to want to get closer to me, but ultimately stopped, simply looking at me with those wet, misty eyes. I knew it. Ning is the best. Just then, a slight cough came from the study doorway. Bairuabing and I turned our heads simultaneously. Lu Ruyan was standing there, arms crossed, leaning against the doorframe. I hadn't noticed when she arrived. She must have just returned home. She was still wearing the evening gown she had worn to the event, a black, off-shoulder-long dress that outlined the perfect curves of her figure. Her face bore exquisite makeup, but her eyes were as cold as ice. Her gaze swept over the undried tear tracks on Bairuabing's face, then fell upon the open brocade box in my hand. The corner of her mouth curled into a faint, mocking arc. It seems I've returned at a bad time. Her voice wasn't loud, but it carried thorns that pierced the air. Bairuabing acted like a frightened deer, abruptly taking a step back to hide behind me, whispering timidly, Sister Ruyan. Lu Ruyan ignored her and walked straight up to me. She carried the cool scent of the outdoors and the faint aroma of wine. She glanced at the inkstone in my hand and gave a light chuckle. Little sister really is thoughtful, finding out my father's preferences so clearly. She raised her hand, not to take the inkstone, but to directly touch the front of my shirt, which had just been dampened by her sister's tears. Her fingertips were cool as they gently caressed the slightly wet fabric. Her movements carried a blatant intimacy and possessiveness. Her gaze, however, looked sharply at by Ruabing behind me. However, her red lips parted slightly, her voice holding a trace of lazy intoxication, yet remaining incredibly clear. My father, naturally, will be taken care of by me and my husband. There is no need to trouble. An outsider. She emphasized the word outsider with particular weight. Ruabing's face instantly turned as pale as paper. Her body swayed, and tears welled up again, but she bit her lip hard to keep herself from crying out. Lu Ruyan withdrew her hand, as if she had merely brushed away a speck of dust. She looked at me, her expression returning to calm, perhaps even carrying a hint of weariness. I'm tired. I'm going back to the room to rest. She turned, her skirt tracing an elegant arc. Reaching the doorway, she stopped without looking back, simply dropping a faint sentence. Husband, aren't you coming back to the room yet? Her voice carried a natural, unquestionable tone of urgency. I stood frozen in place, still holding the cold she inkstone in my hand. Before me was Lu Ruyan's departing figure, proud and resolute. Behind me was the sound of Ruabing's suppressed, faint sobbing. The air was filled with the intense scent of gunpowder and jealousy left behind by the silent confrontation between the two women. I looked down at the brocade box in my hand. I placed it gently on the desk. Then, I stepped forward and walked in the direction of the master bedroom. Some boundaries. Must be clear. When I walked into the master bedroom, Lu Ruyan had already removed her makeup and changed into a nightgown. She was sitting at the vanity with her back to the door, brushing her hair. The mirror reflected her expressionless face. I closed the door. The only sound left in the room was her comb gliding through her long hair. Throw away the inkstone. She spoke suddenly, her voice calm and rippleless. I paused, stunned. That was a gesture of Ruabing's affection. Affection. She set down the comb and turned, fixing me with a sharp gaze. In what capacity does she offer this affection? A distant relative adopted by the Ning family? Or the god-sister you, Ning Tian, decided to claim? She stood up and walked toward me, step by step. A faint post-bath fragrance lingered around her. Ning Tian, don't play dumb. She looked up at me, her eyes holding a piercing, all-knowing coldness. The way she looks at you is not how a sister looks at a brother. Her finger tapped lightly against my chest. She is provoking me, using her youth, her tears, and her so-called fragility. I caught the hand resting on my chest. It felt slightly cool to the touch. She's just an 18-year-old child. She just left the orphanage and feels insecure. Lu Ruyan let me hold her hand, the corner of her mouth curling into a sarcastic arc. 18 years old, yet she already knows how to exploit a man's sympathy. She leaned in close, her breath brushing against my jawline. And you see it clearly, yet you still indulge her. Her other hand caressed my cheek, her fingertips cool. Is it because you enjoy the feeling of being needed? My husband. She spoke those last two words with deliberate lightness, yet they carried the weight of 1,000 pounds. I looked into her eyes, inches from mine. There was anger, dissatisfaction, and a trace of something I had deliberately ignored. Care. I'm not indulging her. I sighed. I just feel sorry for her. Sorry for her. Lu Ruyan let out a soft laugh, though her eyes grew colder. There are plenty of pitiful people in this world. Why don't you just move the entire orphanage into our home? She pulled her hand free, stepped back, and crossed her arms. Tomorrow, I'll have my assistant contact a reputable international boarding school. The environment is excellent. The management is strict, and it will be perfect for her to focus on her studies. She used a tone of finality, leaving no room for negotiation. I frowned. Ruyan, isn't that a bit too? Too what? She cut me off, her gaze sharp. Too heartless? Or does it ruin your fun of keeping a mistress tucked away? Her words were becoming cutting. Ning Tian, our marriage isn't just about two people. It concerns both the Lu and Ning families. She walked to the window, staring out at the heavy night. I don't want some insignificant person causing ugly rumors. Her silhouette under the light seemed aloof, yet bore a trace of imperceptible fatigue. Watching her, I suddenly realized that her recent transformation, her assertiveness, her jealousy, wasn't just about Robbing. It was also because of what this marriage represented, the family ties and dignity that cannot be easily severed. The next morning, the atmosphere at the dining table was exceptionally heavy. Robbing's eyes were swollen like walnuts. She had obviously cried all night. She kept her head down, sipping her milk in silence. Lu Rian, on the other hand, acted as if nothing had happened, eating her breakfast elegantly and occasionally confirming my work schedule for the day. "All right," she said, as if suddenly remembering something. She set down her coffee cup and looked at Robbing. "Sister Robbing, considering your college entrance exams are coming up, Ning Tian and I discussed it and feel you need a quieter environment for your studies." Robbing's grip on her cup tightened violently, her knuckles turning white. She looked up at Lu Ruyan in disbelief, then quickly cast a pleading look at me. Her eyes were filled with panic and fear. Lu Ruyan pretended not to notice and continued in a flat tone. "We found an excellent boarding school for you. You can complete the enrollment procedures this weekend." "No, I won't." Robbing shot up from her chair, knocking over her milk cup. The white liquid spilled across the table. Her face was deathly pale, her whole body trembling. "Ning, I don't want to go to boarding school. I don't want to leave here. Please." She rushed over to me and grabbed my arm, tears streaming down her face. "Ning, don't drive me away. I'll be good, I promise. I'll never make Sister Rian angry again. Don't send me away." She was sobbing so hard she could barely breathe, looking as fragile as a withered leaf in the wind. Seeing her like this, I felt a tightness in my chest. "Robbing, calm down. This is just for the sake of your studies." "It's not for my studies." Robbing screamed, cutting me off. She pointed at Lu Ruyan, her eyes filled with resentment. "It's her. She can't stand me. She wants to kick me out." Lu Ruyan watched her coldly, saying nothing, her eyes holding a hint of disdain. "Ning." Robbing gripped my arm tightly, her fingernails almost digging into my flesh. "You promised to give me a home. You said this was my home. You can't go back on your word." Her voice was shrill, filled with desperate accusation. I looked at her hysterical state, then glanced at Lu Ruyan, who was watching coldly from the side. For a moment, I didn't know how to respond. Lu Ruyan slowly stood up and dabbed the corners of her mouth with a napkin. She walked over to Robbing, towering over her. "Home." Her red lips parted slightly, her voice as cold as ice. "This is my and Ning Tian's home." Her gaze swept over Robbing's hand clutching my arm, her eyes sharpening. "Let go." Robbing was intimidated by her imposing presence, and her grip subconsciously loosened. Lu Rian reached out. Her movement seemed gentle, yet carried a force that brooked no refusal as she brushed Robbing's hand off my arm. Then, she linked her arm with mine and pulled me back a step, putting distance between us and Robbing. She looked at the pail, teetering Robbing, and spoke clearly, enunciating every word. "Remember your place, and remember his. My husband is not someone you should be coveting." With that, she didn't spare Robbing another glance. She turned, holding onto my arm. "Let's go, honey. We're going to be late." Her voice had returned to its usual calm, as if the sharp-tongued woman from moments ago had been someone else entirely. As she led me toward the door, I couldn't help but look back. Robbing was still standing there, her head lowered, her long hair obscuring her expression. Only her tightly clenched, slightly trembling fists betrayed her emotions. I knew this matter wouldn't end so simply. Over the next few days, the atmosphere in the house plummeted to freezing. Robbing no longer actively appeared in front of me, as she used to. She kept herself locked in her room, only appearing silently for meals. She became very quiet. She stopped speaking and no longer showed that timid, fawning smile. She would just keep her head down, eat silently, and then leave quickly, like a pale shadow. But the look in her eyes when she glanced at Lu Ruyan would occasionally leak a trace of unsuppressible coldness and resentment. Lu Ruyan, on the other hand, completely ignored her existence. She seemed very satisfied with the current state of affairs and became increasingly meticulously attentive toward me. This attentiveness carried a clear label of possession. In the morning, She would personally choose my tie and match my cufflinks. "This color suits you." As she stood on tiptoes to adjust it for me, her gaze would inadvertently sweep over the silent by ruabing in the dining room. When I got off work, if I was even slightly late, her call would come right on time. "Honey, where are you? The food is getting cold." Her voice was gentle, yet it carried an unquestionable tone of checking up on me. In the evenings, she would find various reasons to keep me in a master bedroom. Sometimes it was to discuss business, other times simply to make me watch a boring movie with her. She would lean against me, a faint fragrance radiating from her body, like a cat marking its territory. I knew what she was doing. She was using this subtle, dense method to completely isolate by ruabing from my world, and I tacitly consented to this behavior. On Friday night, Lu Ruyan had a social engagement she couldn't get out of. For once, she wasn't home for dinner. It was just me and by ruabing at the table. She sat opposite me, eating in small bites, still silent. Halfway through the meal, she suddenly put down her chopsticks and looked up at me. It was the first time in days she had looked me in the eye. Her eyes were red, framed by dark circles. "Ining." Her voice was very soft, tinged with huskiness. "Is boarding school absolutely necessary?" Looking at her gaunt cheeks, I felt a pang of guilt. The educational environment and resources are better there. It will help you in your final sprint for the college entrance exam. "Is that so?" She smiled slightly, a bleak expression. "Isn't it because Sister Ruyan can't tolerate me?" I put down my chopsticks and looked at her. "Ruabing, you need to focus on your studies. What I need is you." She suddenly became agitated, her voice rising and choked with tears. "Ining, you know exactly what I need. It's a home. It's someone I can rely on." Her tears fell, splashing onto the table surface. "I only have you left. Ining, don't send me away." She stood up, circled the dining table, walked over to me, and crouched down, clutching my knees. She looked up at me, her face awash with tears. "I don't need anything else. I don't even have to go to university. I just want to stay by your side. Even if it's just to look at you, that's enough." She was trembling uncontrollably as she cried, looking unbearably fragile. "Sister Ruyan doesn't love you at all. She only cares about her family, her reputation. She's just using you. And I really am." Before she could finish, the sound of the door opening came from the entryway. Ruabing and I froze at the same time. Ruabing hurriedly let go and tried to stand, but because she had been squatting for so long, her legs gave way, and she collapsed back on the floor. Lu Ruyan walked in. She seemed to have had a little to drink. Her cheeks were slightly flushed, yet her eyes were unusually clear and sharp. She looked at Ruabing, who was slumped on the floor with a tear-stained face. Then she looked at me, sitting at the dining table with a slight frown. The hint of languor on her face, caused by the alcohol, vanished instantly. Replacing it was a cold, knowing mockery. "It seems I've come back at an unfortunate time again." Her voice wasn't loud, but it seemed to carry shards of ice, freezing the air in an instant. Ruabing scrambled to get up, stammering an explanation. "No, Sister Ruyan, I was just..." Lu Ruyan ignored her and walked straight up to me. She carried the chill of the night wind and a faint scent of alcohol. She leaned down, bracing her hands on the edge of the table, trapping me between her and the chair. Her face was very close to mine, her breath brushing against my cheek. Yet her gaze scraped over the disheveled Ruabing on the floor like a knife. "What is little sister doing?" Her red lips curved slightly, her eyes ice cold. "Putting on a show. Playing the victim." Ruabing's face turned instantly pale. Lu Ruyan stopped looking at her, turning her gaze back to my face. Her fingertips lightly traced my jawline, carrying a hint of danger. "Husband." Her voice was low, tinged with a slight tipsiness and a trace of barely perceptible grievance. "When I'm not home, you just let others come to our door and bully you." Her words were pointed, her eyes locking tightly onto me, as if saying, "Look, this is how she endlessly entangles herself with you." And I was the one who owed her an explanation. On the floor, Ruabing's sobbing became suppressed and despairing. In front of me, Lu Ruyan's gaze held a searing interrogation. Caught in the middle, I clearly felt it. This war without smoke. Because of Lu Ruyan's return, it had escalated once again. Lu Ruyan's gaze seemed to have hooks, latching firmly onto me. Bai Ruobing let out a weak whimper from the floor, exceptionally clear in the silent dining room. I raised my hand and gently grasped Lu Ruyan's finger resting on my jaw. Her fingertip was slightly cool. "You've had too much to drink." I looked at her, my voice calm. Lu Ruyan's eyes flickered. She seemed not to have expected this reaction from me. She tried to pull her hand back, but I applied a little force, not letting her break free. I looked toward Bai Ruobing, who was still slumped on the floor. "Ruobing, get up." My tone brooked no argument. Bai Ruobing paused, stopped crying, and looked at me somewhat blankly. "Go back to your room," I continued. "You have school tomorrow." The rims of her eyes turned redder, her lips quivered, and she seemed to want to say something more. But under my gaze, she ultimately bit her lip, silently stood up, stumbling slightly. She didn't spare another glance at Lu Ruyan. Head down, she walked quickly out of the dining room. The sound of her footsteps faded at the top of the stairs. Only Lu Ruyan and I remained in the dining room. She maintained her posture, leaning over to trap me, but the sharpness in her eyes had faded somewhat, replaced by a trace of scrutiny and dissatisfaction. "You're protecting her?" She raised an eyebrow, her tone chilly. I let go of her hand, leaned back, and put a little distance between us. "I am solving the problem." I looked at her, not letting the problem escalate. Lu Ruyan straightened up, crossed her arms, and sneered. "Solve? How do you solve it?" "Sending her away is the best way to solve it. She is dependent on you, Ning Tian. Can't you see that? That kind of abnormal dependence." There was a hint of agitation in her voice that she might not have even noticed herself. "I know," I responded calmly. Lu Ruyan was stunned. She seemed not to have expected me to admit it so bluntly. "I will talk to her," I added, "when her emotions are stable." Lu Ruyan stared at me for a few seconds, as if judging the truthfulness of my words. Then, the coldness on her face slowly faded, replaced by a complex emotion. She suddenly bent down, leaning close to me again. This time, her breath brushed directly against my lips, carrying the scent of wine and her unique coldness. "Ning Tian," she called my name, her voice very soft, but carrying a kind of stubbornness. "I don't care how you talk to her, but there can only be one result." Her fingertip tapped my chest again, resting over the location of my heart. "Here." Her gaze was burning, holding an undisguised possessiveness. "Only I can reside here. Do you understand?" Her declaration was domineering and direct. Like a key, it unexpectedly unlocked a box deep within my heart that had been sealed for so long. I looked into her eyes, which were inches from mine, filled with intoxication and intense determination. I gave no answer. Instead, I reached out, wrapped my arm around her waist, and pulled her a step closer into my embrace. Her body stiffened slightly, seemingly surprised. But she didn't resist. I lowered my head and leaned close to her ear. I could feel her breathing instantly quicken. "Lu Ruyan." I mimicked her way of addressing me by my full name, my voice low and deep. "Have you been getting a little too jealous lately?" The tips of her ears turned red at a visible speed. The blush spread all the way down to her neck. She abruptly pushed me away and stood up straight, a flash of embarrassment and annoyance crossing her face at having her secret thoughts exposed. "Who's jealous?" She glared at me, though her eyes flickered evasively. "I'm simply defending my legitimate rights as Mrs. Ning." Having said that, as if afraid I would say more, she turned and walked briskly toward the stairs. Her footsteps were even a bit frantic. At the top of the stairs, she stopped again. Without looking back, she tossed out a sentence in a stiff tone. "Don't be late for Father's birthday tomorrow." Then, she went upstairs as if she were fleeing. I sat in the dining room, looking in the direction where she had disappeared. The air seemed to still hold her scent and that trace of embarrassed agitation. I raised a hand to touch my chest. There, the rhythm of my heartbeat seemed different than before. I suddenly felt that this cold, aloof, and domineering wife of mine actually looked somewhat cute when she was jealous. The next day was Father Lu's birthday banquet. Lu Ruyan and I arrived early at the Lu family villa. Today she wore a custom-made pale lilac gown, looking elegant and poised. She held my arm, greeting the guests with a decorous and flawless smile. Only I could feel that she was holding my arm a little tighter than usual, as if she were confirming something. Father Lou was very happy to see us, and he was particularly fond of the antique inkstone Lou Ruyen presented to him, unable to put it down. Ruyen, you're getting better and better at picking things out. This inkstone wins my heart. Lou Ruyen smiled faintly and glanced at me. Ning Tian went with me to choose it. He said you would definitely like it. She cleverly shared half the credit with me, giving me plenty of face in front of others. I played along with a smile and didn't expose the truth. The atmosphere at the banquet was harmonious until the figure of Bai Ruobing appeared at the entrance. She actually came after all. She was wearing a simple white dress and no makeup. Her eyes were slightly red and swollen, making her look even more pitiful and fragile. She held a small gift bag in her hand. The smile on Lou Ruyen's face faded, and her grip on my arm instantly tightened. Her nails almost dug into the fabric of my suit. I gently patted the back of her hand, signaling her to stay calm. Bai Ruobing walked straight up to Father Lou and handed him the gift bag, her voice timid. Uncle Lou, happy birthday. This is a small token of my regard. I hope you won't mind it. Father Lou was somewhat surprised, but accepted it politely. It was a decent writing brush. Thank you, Ruobing. That's very thoughtful of you. After giving the gift, Bai Ruobing didn't leave immediately. She turned around and looked straight at Lou Ruyen and me. Her gaze lingered, especially on our linked arms for a moment. Then, looking as if she had mustered all her courage, she walked up to me. Ning. Her voice wasn't loud, but in the relatively quiet room, it was enough for people nearby to hear clearly. Can I have a word with you in private? Just a few sentences. In an instant, the surroundings seemed to grow significantly quieter. Quite a few gazes drifted toward us, seemingly casual but actually attentive. Lou Ruyen's body froze completely. I felt the aura around her turn cold in an instant. I looked at her tense profile, then turned my gaze to Bai Ruobing, whose face was filled with stubbornness and a sense of desperate risk. I knew I couldn't avoid it any longer. I gently extracted my arm from Lou Ruyen's grasp. This action caused Lou Ruyen to snap her head around to look at me, her eyes filled with disbelief and a trace of hurt. A glimmer of hope instantly ignited in Bai Ruobing's eyes. I gave Lou Ruyen a reassuring look, then nodded to Bai Ruobing. Okay. I led her to a relatively quiet terrace nearby. As soon as we stopped, Bai Ruobing's tears fell. Ning, I know I shouldn't have come, but I couldn't help it. She choked on her sobs. I just wanted to tell you, I really like you. Not the way a sister likes a brother. She looked up at me with teary eyes, holding onto a final shred of hope and despair. I know I can't compare to Ruyen. I don't have her family background, nor am I as beautiful as she is. But I met you before she did, and my heart is truer. Ning, please give me a chance. Even if I just stay by your side and watch you from a distance, that would be enough. She reached out, trying to grab my sleeve. I took a step back, avoiding her hand, and looked at her with a calm gaze. Ruobing, my voice was steady, without a single ripple. I brought you home out of sympathy and responsibility. I promised to give you a home, support your education, and let you grow up in peace. But that responsibility does not include the feelings you were hoping for. Bai Ruobing's face instantly turned as pale as a sheet, and her body swayed. Why? Is it because of Ruyen? She forced you, didn't she? No, I interrupted her, my tone firm and decisive. It is because she is my wife. I looked at her, articulating every word with absolute clarity. And I love her. The moment those words left my mouth, even I was slightly stunned. But what followed was a clarity and certainty unlike anything I had felt before. From the shadows at the entrance of the terrace came the sound of a sharp, stifled gasp. I turned to look. Lou Ruyen was standing there. I didn't know how long she had been there. She had her back to the light from the hall, so I couldn't see her expression clearly. I could only see her tightly clenched fists and her slightly trembling shoulders. Bai Ruobing saw her too. The light in her eyes died out completely. She looked at me, then at Lou Ruyen, and suddenly began to laugh, a miserable, despairing laugh. I understand. So, I've been a joke all along. She murmured. Without looking at us again, she turned and ran off, stumbling away in a daze. I didn't chase after her. My gaze fell upon the figure at the entrance of the terrace. I walked towards her. I stopped in front of her. She kept her head down, refusing to look at me. I reached out and gently lifted her chin. Her eyes were red, and there were still wet tear stains on her face. But within those eyes, the usual coldness and sharpness were gone, replaced by a surging tide of emotion that almost drowned me. There was shock, ecstasy, and a fragile disbelief. What? What you just said? Her voice was choked with sobs, filled with cautious hesitation. It's true. I looked at her and repeated it with absolute clarity. Lu Ruyan, I love you. Not because of our arranged marriage. Not because of responsibility. Simply because she is Lu Ruyan. This woman who gets jealous for me, who becomes unlike herself for me, and who loves me in her own clumsy yet domineering way. Lu Ruyan's tears burst forth like a broken dam. She threw herself into my arms, hugging my waist tightly and burying her face in my chest, like a child who had finally gotten her favorite candy. She cried without caring about her image. Her warm tears soaked my shirt. I wrapped my arms around her, gently patting her back, letting her vent her emotions. After a while, her sobbing gradually subsided. She looked up from my arms, her eyes and nose red, yet she glared at me fiercely. Ning Tian, you bastard, she scolded me through her tears. You made me sad for so long. I lowered my head and kissed her wet eyes. My fault. She punched my chest again. From now on, your eyes and your heart can only hold me. Okay, you're not allowed to look at another woman ever again. Okay, you're not allowed to be soft-hearted towards others. Okay. For every command she gave, I agreed, until she could no longer find anything to forbid. She looked at me, then suddenly stood on her tiptoes and kissed my lips. It tasted of salty tears and a burning determination of something lost and found. The kiss was domineering, lingering, and brooked no refusal. It was as if she were branding an eternal mark upon me. When the kiss ended, she was panting slightly, her cheeks flushed crimson. Yet her eyes were shockingly bright, filled with the usual dominance and possessiveness that belonged to Lu Ruyan. She looked at me and declared, articulating every word. Ning Tian, listen to me closely. From the strands of your hair to the tips of your toes, from this life to the next, you can only be mine. Seeing her looking so domineering yet adorable, I couldn't help but chuckle softly. I pulled her tighter into my arms. Amen. I am yours. All of me is yours. Outside the window, the moonlight was beautiful. Inside the hall, the party was in full swing. But here, there was just me and my domineering wife.